Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I think that's about everybody seated. There's a hush gone over the audience, so I think we're ready to go. My name's Andrea Barlow. I'm principal with NES. We're a land planning firm in Colorado Springs, and we work on a lot of residential projects, all the way from master plan communities, larger lot residential subdivisions, now towards the newer trend towards smaller single-family lots, and as well as townhomes, apartments for market rate rents, and apartments for affordable housing. And also the newer trend that's starting to pick up is single family rental accommodation. So across the board, and it's all happening in Colorado Springs, but it's really probably not happening at the rate we want it to in terms of the affordable component, and that's why we're all here today. So thank you for coming. I'm also the chair of the HBA Public Policy Council, and we are the group that put on this event. We are all here today to talk about attainable housing, so that's across the board, the complete continuum of housing, and to find solutions in a manner that we can all work together. So we have been working with a small group that has involved other experts in the field, including the Chamber, and EDC, Pikes Peak Realtors, and the Apartments Association and Downtown Partnership. So we've all been working consistently together to try and talk about what these issues are and how we can come up with solutions and empower our local officials as well to actually help find solutions as we move through this this housing crisis that we have across the country, but we're focusing today on our local issues and what we can do as a business community to come together and achieve that objective. The HBA is a trade association. We have over 500 members representing about 10,000 employees, and it's the HBA's members' job to produce the housing. They are the ones who construct the housing. So fundamental part of this issue, and the mission of the HBA is to promote policies that allow for the production of safe and attainable housing. That's been the mission for a very long time, and it is really important that we engage the entire community in that effort. So again, thank you all for being here, and in particular, I'd like to thank our sponsors today. I've already mentioned the organizations, but I'd like to thank Dirk Draper and the members of the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC for their sponsorship. Thank you, Dirk. I'd like to thank Steve Volkadav, sorry, Steve, for messing up your name, and the Pikes Peak Realtors Association. I see some folks here today. And Laura Nelson, I can't see Laura, I saw her earlier. There you are, Laura, thank you. With the Apartments Association of Southern Colorado, and Susan Edmondson with the Downtown Partnership. Thank you very much for everybody sponsoring the event. And we also have a number of experts in the audience. You know who you are, people who are working in the business of housing and providing attainable housing. And so we thank you for your attendance here today and willingness to maybe ask some difficult questions or even be prepared to answer some of the questions that others ask. And a big thank you to El Paso County for their providing the facility today. We appreciate the staff and commissioners' help in putting on this event, and we couldn't have done it without this. It's a perfect facility, nice and spacious. Please remember the COVID protocols. We are supposed to be wearing our masks. That's all I'm saying. And we have, if you parked in the parking garage, you can get a parking ticket from Marla, who sat down here, so you have free parking. And with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator, who will be Dirk Draper with the Chamber and EDC. Since Dirk became CEO of the Chamber and EDC in May 2015, he has steered the organization to new heights. And membership has increased from a low of 900s to nearly 1,300 today. The Chamber has received 3 state and national awards in 2020, and the Chamber and the city have racked up numerous awards and #1 spots on various lists. I think you're probably all aware of that we are becoming, Colorado Springs is becoming one of the hot spots of where people want to be, and that's one of the reasons we've got a housing issue. So, and the Chamber is a strong partner that's in supporting attainable housing in the context of economic growth, and housing is a critical factor as a determinant of whether people want to locate in the Springs. So now I'm going to pass over to Dirk, who's going to moderate the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, folks who are here in the audience today and those of you live streaming on Facebook Live. We appreciate the HBA for pulling this event together. You may not be able to see the whole audience. There's probably 60 here in the room with us today, folks online, and look forward to engaging with you throughout. Isn't it feels like a privilege to get back together in person, doesn't it? And this is a good topic to gather together for. This forum is the first of 3 such conversations these community partners will be hosting this year. Watch for future information about additional events later in the summer and fall. The Chamber and EDC is involved in this discussion because the housing crisis we're in, and it is a crisis, threatens the success and the profitability, the prosperity of our business community. Our current businesses can't expand if their employers can't afford to live here, can't afford to find housing. Unaffordable housing threatens our ability to attract new employers to the region, to diversify our economy, strengthen the depth of our business community. And those of us it impacts many personal decisions as well. My wife and I are empty nesters now and in a house that's larger than we need. And it's a difficult calculus right now to think about selling that house, moving in this housing market and what that may look like. Same thing for those of us who are parents who would like our children to move back here as next generation workforce and their ability to afford living in Colorado Springs. So for many reasons, Andrea didn't exaggerate when she described this as a housing crisis. On Wednesday, the Gazette, in an article by Ernest Looning, reported on a survey conducted earlier this month by Magellan. They're a Magellan Strategies, a Colorado-based survey firm. The survey found that more than 74% of the more than 500 respondents consider affordable housing to be a problem in their community. 74%. 57% said it's a big problem. 19% said it's not much of a problem. The poll also found that 73% of voters think housing in their community is unaffordable. 73%. The survey also found that 15% of respondents said their community has housing, only 15% has housing available for anyone who wants to buy a home. Those are numbers that should alarm all of us who are participating in the forum and those who aren't participating in the forum who touch the industry in different ways. This is a complex problem. It's a perfect storm of supply and demand that's driving this. Andrea mentioned the attention we're receiving as a community is a great place to live, high quality of life. We also have challenges on so that's a demand side issue. We have challenges on the supply side with materials costs, land availability, talent availability in the crafts and trades. And while this is a local problem, it's not just a local problem. As you'll hear from our keynote speaker, as you may read following nearly daily articles in national media, this is a national problem as well. So the Chamber and EDC, along with the other community partners, HBA, Pikes Peak Association Realtors, the Apartment Association, Downtown Partnership, we're committed to working together to find solutions that we can impact locally. We've done lots of elegance, not the right word. We've done lots of excellent admiration of the problem. Let's work on solutions together and let's move what we can do locally. Our local leaders are aware of this and are concerned or engaged in a number of different ways. And I won't try to, because we have a virtual audience as well, I'll just say thank you to the numerous city councilors and county commissioners who are with us today. If you're here in the audience, city councilors, county commissioners, would you stand for just a moment so you could be recognized? Thank you for your service. Thank you for your interest and concern about the problem. Notable among the group, folks online, three of our city councilors who just stood are just freshly sworn in, I guess, to serve. So thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership. And next I'll introduce leader of the city, Mayor John Suthers. Mayor Suthers is the 41st mayor of Colorado Springs in his second term leading our community. Hardly needs an introduction, but I'm going to give you a short one anyway, sir. Before being elected mayor of his hometown, John Suthers had a long and distinguished career in the legal field. Served as the Attorney General of Colorado, the U.S. Attorney for the state of Colorado, and the District Attorney of the 4th Judicial District that covers El Paso and Teller counties. Under his leadership, the city has flourished, garnering national attention for quality of life, for strong management, and very importantly right now, for our resiliency and recovery from the pandemic. Of particular interest in today's topic was the mayor's commitment in his 2018 State of the City address to build, preserve, and create opportunities to purchase an average of 1,000 affordable housing units over the next 5 years. Thank you, Mayor, for that commitment and for being here this morning. Sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk, and good morning. Home builders, realtors, apartment owners, their friends, everybody interested in more attainable housing. And I want to congratulate and thank so many of you in this room today and so many of you who are online. You have been the most resilient and fast-growing segments of our local economy through a very difficult economic time. Believe it or not, 2020, when our country was in the grip of a worldwide pandemic, the Pikes Peak region saw record levels of single-family and multifamily residential development and record levels of commercial construction. There's no question that it's a good time to be in the housing business in Colorado Springs. It's just not a good time to be looking for a house in Colorado Springs. Our home values and growing population is, for the most part, very good news, a sign of the economic resiliency and desirability of living in Colorado Springs. But I know you're all aware, and that's why you're here today, that housing affordability remains a concern for many cities in America, and Colorado Springs is certainly no exception. Our housing market has never been so tight. We talk monthly. We have a little morning meeting with realtors and the chamber, HBA, and I always ask how many homes are for sale today in Colorado Springs. And one day last week when I inquired, there were 95 single-family houses in this entire city listed for sale at under $600,000. And I understand a year ago it was well over 1,000. Perhaps a hazard of being viewed as the most desirable place to live in America, like officially viewed by U.S. News and Report as the most desirable place to live in America, is the impact such recognitions have on the housing market, particularly when people all across this nation are looking for to move from more crowded and, frankly, more turbulent places. The median price for a single-family home in Colorado Springs right now is $371,000, representing a 15.2% increase year over year. But lest that sound, unbelievable, that's not much more than the national average of 14.9%. But I think what will really be telling to a lot of people in this room is it's faster than Denver's. That is a big turnaround over the last several years. And the reason why we're here, folks, is this presents some challenges. As Dirk indicated, I set a goal a couple years ago for my administration as part of the Home COS plan to build or make available 1,000 new affordable housing units each year. At that point, we were producing about 500 new units a year. The city is not a housing provider, but what we can do is leverage the federal dollars we receive, form partnerships with organizations like the HBA, with developers, builders, service providers, and corporations to address this complex problem. These partnerships include federal tax incentives and planning assistance to encourage developers to invest in affordable housing that both helps our communities and makes financial sense for the developer. And I'm pleased to say there are currently under construction 600 affordable apartments with an additional 1,100 that will be breaking ground in the next couple of months. We will meet our goal for 2021. Affordable housing is key to our residents, of course, but it's just as important to our business community. It's vital to point out that affordable housing doesn't only cater to low-income individuals or those at risk of homelessness. Affordable housing can be defined as available to those earning up to 80% of the local median income. In Colorado Springs, that means an individual making $44,300 per year would qualify for affordable housing. For us, that often includes teachers, manufacturing crews, social workers, and even some medical professionals. These are people we value greatly in our community, and it should be our goal to ensure it's possible for them to find housing here. So I thank you all for coming to this important forum, where I know we'll delve much deeper into this and other important issues facing the housing market in the United States and Colorado Springs in particular. And given the reputation of our speaker, Elliot Eisenberg, I understand we're going to be entertained in the process as well. So I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Mayor Suthers. Commissioner Stan Vanderwerf is the chair of the Board of County Commissioners. He is in his second term representing District 3 on the board. That's I think we're in your district right now, am I correct? It's the south and west part of the city. He's running up to Teller County. Commissioner Vanderwerf is the founder of several small businesses dealing with unmanned aerial aircraft, aerospace. I don't think you've done cybersecurity yet, but 3D printing, and certainly a champion for economic development in our community. He's active in the community. Before I go, I should mention he also served 28 years in the United States Air Force. Thank you for that. He is active in the community, a strong advocate for economic development, extensive experience in many areas of public policy, including budgeting, public disaster planning and recovery. Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us this morning, and please, a few remarks.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, everybody. First of all, welcome to our boardroom. And this is where we hold our meetings every Tuesday for the Board of County Commissioners. And if you haven't been to one of our board meetings someday, please come by and just see how the county conducts government business. It's always a great civics lesson in case you haven't had a chance to do it. So on behalf of my board, the Board of County Commissioners, and the team at El Paso County, I'd like to welcome you. I think this is outstanding that we are holding this meeting. And I am thrilled to be joined by several of my county commissioner colleagues. I'd like to point them out. So we have Commissioner Lejinos Gonzalez right here, and it's great that he is here. We have Commissioner Carrie Geithner, and I think we have Commissioner Cami Bremer in the back. And I don't think we have the fifth commissioner. I think she had another obligation. Is she here? Oh, she's on Facebook. Outstanding. So we have all five of us here. And whether you're on Facebook or in present, it means you're here. So all five of us are here. And I want to illustrate that represents a commitment, among so many other things, that the county has to working to try to address this problem. And the problem is a serious problem, a serious challenge for us, and it is a great topic for us to have a conversation about. I appreciate the comments from the mayor and from Dirk that this is something that we need to not just talk about, but take some action on to see if we can find some solutions. So, you know, some things that the El Paso County has done, you may or may not be aware of this, but we've been working on trying to address this challenge for quite some time. In December of 2017, we enacted tiny home legislation as one of several efforts, and tiny homes can be constructed in a variety of different ways in county jurisdiction. We have another very interesting and I think very important activity going on right now, and that's the El Paso County Master Plan that my understanding is will go to our Planning Commission after a long set of reviews and development. It'll go to the Planning Commission next week for review and approval. The great news about the master plan, there is so much in there that works to try to address this attainable housing challenge, but also many other things about trying to make it easier for the industry to build homes to serve our citizens. If you've not had a chance to review that document in detail, I would highly recommend you do so. Just want to let you know we have received thousands of comments. on that master plan from both the industry and citizens. So there is a lot of civic engagement in that master plan, and we're thrilled that we're offering that, and will be operating for many years upon approval of that master plan. I hope that you get that opportunity to review it and provide input and comments. Many of you have, and we've been doing our best to respond to those. I'm also thrilled to just mention very briefly how important it is to have partnerships to solve this problem or to work this problem. And one great example of partnerships is something that the city and the county recently accomplished, and that is an annexation agreement. This is really, really important, I think, as one of several tasks, one of several things that we can do to work on this challenge. The annexation agreement is completed, voted on by both the Board of County Commissioners and City Council. I think it was unanimous in both cases. And I think it means a lot to illustrate the city's and the county's commitment to address improvements in processing and making things easier for all of us to kind of work in this environment. One of the things I love about the annexation agreement are the requirements in it for earlier notification from both the city and the county as an obligation to the other partner to make sure that we have smooth transitions for annexations that might take place. And we will see more annexations as the city grows. I think there's another important aspect to what is going on. This may or may not be something that many people in this room think about too much, but I can tell you when you go to a National Association of Counties meeting, that's the National Association for Counties and County Commissioners, you will see an enormous amount of conversation and discussion about urbanization of counties. Urban counties is now a thing that is here with us, and it is a challenge across the country where there are large swaths of terrain, of land that have urbanized that are not being annexed by municipalities. This is a very interesting development, and I think that trend is going to continue, and it means that counties are, from this point forward, really have been for some time, but from this point forward, will be increasingly engaged in urban land use considerations. That's something that we're dealing with in El Paso County, but it is something that's happening on a nationwide scale. So these housing affordability and housing attainability problems are core and central to counties as well as they are to cities. And we're going to continue to see that trend. So again, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the HBA, the Realtors Association, the Downtown Partnerships, the team that we have here this morning. Partnerships are key, and it is so important that we do everything we can to figure out ways to resolve this challenge. One of those, obviously, right, is attaining enough supply to meet demand. That is the core and most important challenge I think that we have. But there are other things that we can do. One that I have worked on quite a lot with the HBA regarding multifamily housing, and that's construction defect liability reform. One of the challenges that many of you know has been difficult for the industry to get into more deeply multifamily housing. Because of the liability challenges that are connected with it. And we know we've had some treatment about that in Colorado, but we also know that treatment is not sufficient, really, for the industry to really move more aggressively into multifamily kind of housing developments. And we know how important it is in our current situation to have that kind of thing be done more extensively. Having said that, I'm thrilled that there are developers that are working so intensively on multifamily housing. We've got a lot of that taking place, but we know we will need more. So there are several things that we can work on. Supply, a big challenge, but I think there's other things that we can also address, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. Again, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. It illustrates a commitment that we all have to our industry, but also to our partners. The county is part of that. We're thrilled to be part of it, and I look forward to the conversation and the remarks from our guest speaker today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for being here this morning. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I just want to point out in the audience and online we have many subject matter experts in the area representing from the community and the city and county. I'm not going to endeavor to name them all, but here's a few representing planning, public works, city engineering, the city's city and county engineering, the homeless prevention and response coordinator, Steve Posey, Craig Dossie, Jennifer Irvine, Andy Phelps, a long list of folks who are here to help field questions as we proceed through. So online and here in the audience, do get ready, prepare your questions as we go. There'll be a chance at the end of the program for thorough discussion. Our keynote speaker today is Dr. Elliot Eisenberg, as you can see behind me, the bow tie economist. And I got to say, sir, I love your style. I love the neckwear. I appreciate that. He is an internationally acclaimed economist and a public speaker specializing in economics and making it, as you can see, graphs and laughs, making it, believe it or not, fun, interesting, and relevant. He earned his undergraduate degree in economics from McGill University in Montreal, master's and PhD in public policy from Syracuse University. Specifically for today, of specific interest for today, he's the former senior economist with the National Association of Home Builders. He's very familiar with Colorado, has done lots of work consulting with our mountain communities and along the Front Range, and he has been in Colorado Springs on several occasions previously. He serves as the expert advisory board of the Mortgage Market Guide. He's a regular consultant to real estate professional associations, hedge funds, and investment groups. His work has been featured in Bloomberg, Businessweek, Bureau of National Affairs, Forbes, Fortune, and more publications than we have time to go through at the moment. And for reasons you'll understand in just a minute, he is regularly featured as a guest on cable news programs and public radio. Dr. Elliot Eisenberg. Please make him welcome.
Well, my gosh, what an incredibly warm welcome. It's really a pleasure to be here, pleasure to be back. My gosh, thank you very much. Dirk, it's a pleasure. Mr. Mayor, thank you. County commissioners, city councilors, presidents of the various funding sponsor associations, their boards, and so on. Thank you all very much for this opportunity to present. And I am somewhat blown away by a lot of the comments I've already heard, the recognition of the problem, the attempts to already find solutions. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to offer much more than a lot of color on a problem that you're all already intimately aware of. But that being said, hopefully this jumpstarts a little bit more of a conversation or a conversation at a higher level. We'll see. But let's begin by talking about the overall economy, because the housing market doesn't live in isolation from the overall health of the U.S. economy. And the U.S. economy has made tremendous strides. There's been a lot of fiscal stimulus, a tremendous amount of monetary stimulus. This hasn't happened by accident, by any stretch of the imagination. But the U.S. economy is doing much better. Data last couple days, last few weeks, data came out this morning, has been really quite good. Look at something like this. You can't look at a piece of data like this and not go, wow. Yeah, sure, there's a lot of stimulus money out there from checks from last March from President Trump, and in December from President Trump in the lame duck session, and just recently from President Biden. I mean, there's lots of money sloshing around, but this money is, in fact, being spent. It's not all being saved. This is a good thing. It's going to get us out of the recession that we were in. Probably only a 2 or 3 month recession at the end of the day, March, April, maybe May of 2020 were the recession. We'll get out of it pretty fast because of this massive involvement by the federal government in doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, look at this number. This is absolutely insane. That's unbelievable. We're buying stuff like there's no tomorrow. There aren't enough trucks, there aren't enough truck drivers, there aren't enough warehouse space, there's shortages of everything. Everything you want to buy is on back order. A dishwasher, a refrigerator, a bicycle, a baseball mat, it doesn't really matter. Because of this. Purchases of goods have gone absolutely bonkers. We're stuck in our house. We can't go to a bar, we can't go to a basketball game, we can't go to a ballet, we can't go to a baseball game. So what do? We stay home, buy stuff, and drink. I'm not kidding. Booze sales are up, marijuana sales are up. Oh, similarly, gun sales and bullet sales are up. But that's a whole separate conversation. I'm not suggesting anything there except anything, but whatever. We're not buying services. We're afraid to go to it took me 6 months to go get a haircut. I almost had a man bun. I was so desperate. But I was afraid I'd die at the barber shop. It's like haircut or death. You know, okay, long hair is a really good deal by comparison. So our economy is somewhat warped. Because in every other recession, and in all recessions, you get spending in services more or less remains constant. People don't you can't say, oh, I'm not going to get cancer this month because that's a recession. But suddenly, in this recession, people who got cancer still didn't go to the hospital because they thought the cancer would be a slow death, whereas COVID would be a quick one. So they decided not to even go to the hospital. So services just stopped. Normally, it's the other, and normally when you have a recession, it's goods that take it on the chin. You're afraid you're going to lose your job, so you don't buy a car, you don't buy an RV, you don't buy a house, you don't buy a boat, you don't buy a pool for your house. No, not this time around. This time around, the Y's closed, summer camp is closed, can't go on an airplane, let's buy an RV, let's buy a houseboat, let's buy a pool. It's unbelievable what goes on. This recession has completely been reversed than all other ones. So you look at some of the data on sales of goods, it gives you a false feeling because they're terrific, but it's somewhat at the expense of services, right? Which is important to note. And why is this recession different? Because it's a pandemic recession. It's not a normal recession. Normal recessions, you go in kind of slow, you come out kind of slow, whatever. Here we went in virtually overnight. March 1st, things were great. And by March 30th, we were locked down and we were in the process of losing 22 million jobs in the course of 4 or 5 weeks. That's the number of people who work in Canada. We lost them all in a month or 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever the crazy number was. But fortunately now, as you can see here, COVID cases are continuing to decline. We've had 3 peaks, 1, 2, and 3, each one substantially worse, and economic conditions in the country reflect this. You see very good economic data here. You see dismal economic data here, and now the data is getting much better. So people, they're sure governments are closing down, sure city councils requiring or mayors or whatever that's going on is telling people wear masks, stay far away, can't have indoor seating or whatever. But it's also a case of people saying, whoa, cases are high, I don't want to get sick here, I'm going to stay home. Economists have looked at that data and shows, yes, government policies matter, but people also take decisions into their own hand. Individuals are not we're all free agents here. We make some choices on our own. But the COVID is still critically important, and all my comments here are predicated on the assumption that COVID is not going to get worse. Now, COVID, if it stays as it is, will not get worse because we're going to get inoculated, we'll slowly get herd immunity, and the problem will largely go away. Whether it's a year or 2 or 3 remains to be seen, but it will slowly go away. All viruses eventually do that, one way or another. The problem that we face with COVID is a new variant. And the problem with the variant is, look, Brazil's a big country. It's a couple 100 million people live in Brazil, and India's got 1.4 billion. So together you have 1.6 billion people. That's more than the population of North America, South America, and Europe. And the chance of one bad variant appearing seems reasonably high. Now, is that variant going to be resistant to the vaccinations that we've already had? Who knows? But it could be, and if it is, it would delay the recovery. And most coronaviruses don't mutate. But this virus has had access to so many billions of people around the globe. And every time it infects somebody, it mutates slightly. So the aim should be to get the virus under control as quickly as possible to reduce the likelihood of a variant coming out that's bad. Look, let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope the shots that we've had are keep any new variants out there at bay. But we'll see. But nonetheless, look. This decline in COVID cases here, right? This decline here is, look where we are now. This data came out yesterday. This used to be Bloomberg Consumer Confidence Number, but they sold it to Langer, whoever Langer is. You can see there's been a noticeable rise. People are happier, there's no question. People are going out, they're doing more things, sales of services, activities are going up. People are pretty happy. Stimulus checks have come. The weather's improved. Government shutdowns have reduced. Older people like my folks are willing to go to a restaurant for the first time in a year. This is telling you that the economy is waking up. Sure, the monetary and fiscal policy stimulus has mattered a lot. No question, we wouldn't be where we are even close without it. But things are organically starting to turn around. That's the important thing. We're going to create lots of jobs and so on and so forth. And this is all good. It makes affordable housing worse, but generally it's a good thing. So this is a nice piece of data. So what you see here is public transit use, highest in October, lowest January 1st. So you go back here, highest This is terrible. This is December. It's awful. It was low in October. That's when public transit use is high. Here, case loads are high. Public transit usage is low. So we're very much attuned to what's going on. These numbers go up and down. Our behavior changes. We feel safer. We feel more safe. We feel less safe. Similarly, the restaurant data I could show you. There's other all hosts of data of this sort. Look at manufacturing. They're thrilled. They're out of their minds. They're happy. They can sell everything they make. Every single thing. Whatever you make as a manufacturer, you can sell it. Because we have these insatiable needs. We can't go to Europe. We can't go here. We can't go there. We're stuck in our house. We can't travel internationally. We can't see our cousins. We can't see our parents. We can't see our kids. We can't see our grandkids. I'll buy an RV. You know, I'll buy whatever it is. I have all this money. It's burning a hole in my pocket. I have nowhere to go. Let's fix the house up. Let's get pavers. Let's get a Weber grill. Let's buy a $5,000 barbecue outside. I mean, these are all decisions we're doing because, well, I can't do what I want to do. I'll do something else. It's not it's the second best, right? This is what we end up doing. So manufacturers who were dying on the vine back in April and May, when we weren't leaving our houses and hadn't figured out you could buy things on Amazon, the manufacturers were firing all their workers, closing their factories, and so on. And then 2 months later, out of the ashes, it goes absolutely crazy. And now we're catching up. We don't have enough lumber. We can't get a refrigerator. Nothing. Whatever you want to buy, no, you can't. You wait 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, whatever it is. Oh, the shipping containers are stuck in the Suez Canal. I mean, all kinds of things are crazy happening. But this is an economy that's rebounding much quicker than we thought, because of the massive amount of monetary and fiscal policy that the U.S. has implemented here. And we're recovering much faster than other countries. It's important to note that the U.S. was not all that good at focusing on the illness itself, the virus itself. Most other Western democracies had lower mortality rates than we did on a per capita basis. But we have been much more effective in the vaccination process and in the fiscal and monetary policy process than any other country has. And the U.S. is now going to lead the world out of this recession. Ahead of China for a short, brief period of time, our growth rate should exceed the Chinese rates. So the world's looking to us right now to say, hey, the U.S. is going to help drag us out. It's an unusual place for us to be. It's kind of nice. Look at what firms are spending on. Firms are buying tons of stuff. Firms have to rearrange their entire business. What worked in pre-pandemic won't work now. You can't walk in and stand in a line with 24 people milling around to get a coffee. You got to order coffee online. You walk in and you show, okay, I paid for my coffee. Give me my coffee or whatever. Or where's a QR code? I'll get a menu or whatever. I'll open the bathroom doors with my phone or with my foot or whatever it is, right? All these things have to change. If you don't change, every firm had to rethink everything they do. I, as a public speaker, had to rethink everything I did. I was a public speaker, for God's sake. There was no public speaking going on for the last year. If I didn't pivot fast enough, I would have pivoted out of town, So everyone had to rethink. So the spending is going up here. Firms are spending tons of money on equipment. They're spending tons of money on intellectual property, software, and so on to manage this crisis, right? And successfully. Oil prices are going up. This is good for Colorado, I guess more Weld County than anywhere else, I think. And natural gas prices are sort of going up a little, so I guess that's good for Mesa County and La Plata County, I guess, right? So that's all else equal a good thing. Oil prices aren't all that high. It's $63 a barrel. This is an eminently reasonable price. It's not high enough to make consumers unhappy, but it is high enough to keep the fracking guys happy enough. We'll see about federal policy on that. That remains to be seen. But oil prices are up. That's a pretty good thing, too. Agricultural prices are doing pretty nicely also. Last year farmers did pretty well because of subsidies from Washington. This year they're going to do well because their crop prices are actually doing pretty well for themselves. So that's a good thing too. So farmers are happy, more happier. Energy people are happier. Manufacturers are happy. Sellers of services are getting happier. So hotel occupancy rates are going up. Air load factors in planes are going up. This is a pretty good story. GDP this year is going to be great. I'll show you some numbers in a couple of seconds. Corporate profits are terrific. I mean, yesterday, day before, this morning, right? Firms are coming out. Amazon came out with like monster numbers. Not shocking, right? We don't go anywhere. You guys are collecting sales tax on Amazon. That's really important. I mean, if it weren't for that, this would be a disaster, right? But, this is the way our economy is adapting. There have been some really big winners and there have been some very big losers. But overall, the economy's dealt with this pretty well. And even if we have, I've insulted this lovely lady. She's leaving now. Okay, thanks for the Colorado welcome. Okay, even if we have another lockdown, and this is important to point out, and I fear that we might. I hope we don't. I'm not expecting it, but it's in the background there. If we do, the impacts of subsequent lockdowns will each be less than the previous one because we figured out how to manage this process. We figured out as individuals how to manage. We figured out as corporations, by here buying all that stuff, we figured out. And we figured it out as government. I point to you two, but I know there's a number of you in the audience and online. But you figured out how best to tailor these things, how to discuss it, how to advertise it, how to get community buy-in or whatever it is. We've all learned to adapt. So in countries where they've had multiple lockdowns, Britain, for example, each one has had the negative impact from the lockdown has been sequentially smaller each time because you learn to figure it out. We're not all newbies anymore. We've been at this now for 15 months. We're starting to get smarter here, right? Corporate profits are good. The stock market is rocking. This is important. This is both good and bad for housing. Stock market's good. Interest rates are low. Corporate earnings are really high. And it's important. Another reason low interest rates have driven the stock market high. Another reason is that bigger companies have munched smaller companies, right? So what's your name? Anne. So Chez Anne, she had a great restaurant, French food. It was terrific, high class, really nice. Chateaubriand for $300 or something. It was delicious. But unfortunately, you can't put that in the to-go box. It just doesn't work well. You, by contrast, Dawn, you own a Chipotle franchise, or 17 of them, and you just took over her restaurant because you had money from sponsors and you had bigger firm and Wall Street money and whatever. You took her restaurant away. Not deliberately, but it just worked out that way. Instead of buying Chateaubriand, we bought a burger or a wrap or something, right? That's just the way it's been. But your company's on the stock exchange and yours is not. So public companies have won at the expense of smaller companies, and that's what the stock market's doing. So even though unemployment is pretty high in many sectors, service sectors like restaurants and so on. But stock market's doing well. Yeah. So housing has done well too. We're going to talk a lot about housing very soon. You own a house? Oh, you're happy. House price up, what, 15, 14%? You said 13, 14, Denver, 13 here, 14. There's like 12 houses for sale. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? You own a house, you're happy. You own stock, you're happy. You own shares outside of a retirement plan, you're happy. You own shares in a retirement plan, you're happy too. Many of us own a house, own some stock, whoa, it's been good. But if you don't own either of these things, whoa, it's been bad. And if you don't own either, the chances are you're obviously low income, and then you're in real trouble because you probably lost your job too. So it's really funny. You can go around town, many of you, I'm sure, and never encounter someone who's lost their job. But there are so many people who've lost their job. Food pantries are they're busier than they've ever been. But I don't know anybody personally who's been a food pantry, right? Because all my friends are highly educated. We all work from home. We're all on Zoom. It's this bizarre process. The impacts have been wildly unequal, wildly, and exacerbated by this asset inflation that we've seen in both the stock market and home prices. So you don't own a home, you don't own a house, a home, stock, or a job, you're really in pretty bad shape. Right? And that's why the Federal Reserve is trying desperately to improve the economy as fast as they can by not raising interest rates. This is President Biden's proposed hard infrastructure bill. A couple days ago, he came out with a soft infrastructure bill on Wednesday morning, if I'm not mistaken. Collectively, it's $4 trillion. I don't want to get into too much detail here for a bunch of reasons. One, we don't know what these bills will look like when they finally get to Capitol Hill and they start to get voted on in the House and Senate. They'll be much smaller, I expect, although maybe not. It's possible they can do it through reconciliation, keep their coalition, keep their caucus together, and pass it to the Senate. Remains to be seen. The other reason it's not terribly important in the short run is these bills, at least this one, is primarily infrastructure, hard infrastructure. That takes a long time to build. You don't build roads and sewer systems and police stations and fire stations and broadband over a day. That will take years and years and years and years. The economic impact of this on any given year in the near future is pretty small. So I'm not thinking this is going to matter to our economy in the short run. The soft infrastructure bill, however, could, because there'll be a lot of money in there for salaries, for more teachers at community colleges if they become free, and pre-K schooling for kids, and elder care for older adults if the government starts to subsidize this one way or another. That will have more of an effect on our economy in the immediate future than the hard infrastructure bill. Again, it remains to be seen if these ever get passed out. We just don't know. And look at this number. This is a crazy number. This is high-frequency data. So economists normally look at government data to get results, to get information for our building our econometric models and so on. It's the best data. There's no question. The government data is terrific. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and on, right? But that data takes at least a month to come out. There are some that come out weekly. Most come out on a monthly. Some come out quarterly. What good is quarterly data when you're in these lockdowns and open ups? And you need data that's more frequent. So this index here behind me, put up by a couple of economists, I think three, looks at data that comes out daily, weekly. Steel production, home construction, restaurants, and on and on and on. You get the idea, 10 of them. Economists have become very intrigued by this data because it's frequently available. It may not be good, but it's available very often. We don't know how good the data is. Only now are we beginning to discover that this data actually is very good. If you look at the individual pieces of data, like airplane travel and restaurant attendance and all those sorts of things, this is remarkably good data. So economists have now been able to widen their scope of the data that they look at and not think, oh, that's this crappy weekly data that's good for nothing. It's just not, it's from Open Table. You can't trust these guys. Well, it turns out you really can. They were ahead of the federal data, not because it's better, just because it comes out quicker. So this is that data. I mean, you can't look at this series and go, oh my God. I mean, that's unbelievable. Our economy truly is turning itself around. There's no doubt about it. There's probably no looking back. Our recovery from this recession will be short and brief. It was down quickly and out relatively quickly. A year out, 2 months in and a year out, that's pretty quick. Labor markets remain to be seen. So this is the data that really matters in the unemployment data. Official unemployment data somewhere around here, around 6%. But there are two things you have to think about with unemployment. The first one is the yellow. The yellow is simply mistakes. The Bureau of Economic Analysis gets this data, and they put it out monthly, and they just can't code it right. They tell us this on the press release. They say, we've made a mistake yet again this month. I don't know why they can't get it right after like a year and a half, but hey, that's not my problem, right? But they're very frank about it, and they also, as a policy, don't go back and fix prior month's data. They never make any corrections. That's their decision as an institution. Fine, it's a reasonable decision. So we know the magnitude of the error that they're coding errors because they tell us what it is. It's yellow. It's shrunk generally. It's widened a little bit of late, but whatever. So you know you have to take the unemployment rate here and add the yellow to it. That's unequivocal, right? That's just what it is. The bigger question, the question, not the bigger one, the question is the blue. This is the conundrum our economy faces right now. On one hand, unemployment's high. On the other hand, you can't get workers, right? Everyone complains you can't find quality, competent workers to work in your restaurant, on the job site, whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? And the question is, where are these workers? And will they come back? That's the big issue. And this is the problem. If you look at it either way, the blue is the labor force participation rate, and the bottom in red is the employment to population ratio. They look at slightly different things, but they basically are telling us the same story. The recession hits, the number of people in the labor force are working drops like a friggin' rock. And then it comes back, and then it's going up a bit here, it's kind of declined, but going up a bit there. We've lost people. They've just dropped out. Well, when will they come back? Are they gone because they have COVID, long COVID or something, and they won't come back for years because they have no taste buds or something, and they work as a cook? I'm making it up, but you get the point. No insult to any cooks. I've never had any taste for food, so I don't know. Are they caring for somebody who has COVID and they can't go to work because of that? Are they at home because juniors accidentally being homeschooled because the school's closed? And if the school's closed, then someone's got to stay home, and it's almost always mommy. 8 or 9 times out of 10, it turns out. Dads just don't care. They're happy to leave the crying kid and get to work. Mommy, I love you, honey. I'm off to work. Yeah, you take care of the little monster, our little monster. If they come back quickly, labor markets improve quicker, wage pressures don't go up that much, it's a good thing. Oh, maybe it's the stimmy money that I got so much money in stimmy checks, you know, in last March and then in December and then again now in March, April. Yeah, I'm saving that money. I don't need to work. Maybe it's the $300 a week top off in unemployment insurance that goes through August or I think September. Maybe that's keeping them away. So there's a myriad number of reasons. People are trying to understand what it is, but they're not coming back yet. How fast will they come back? This is a big deal. If they come back, again, no problem. If they don't come back, that's a really big problem. We've lost a huge chunk of potential employee numbers. And the last question is, maybe they don't have the right skills. They don't want to drive a truck. They're used to doing X. Now there's lots of demand for Y, but they don't want to go there. So they stay home because they can afford it because of the money. So this is the big single biggest question. We do have wage data. So you can look at the wage data and get some inkling on what might be going on. This is interesting. This is wage data, right? Doesn't move much. If these people were coming back in droves, there'd be a lot more people looking for work. And employers would probably be able to lower the wages because there'd be huge demand for jobs. But they're not. So right now, they're not coming back. I want to see that number start to go down. That would make me feel good. It would put downward pressure on wages. It would increase the amount of available workers for work, boost GDP. There'd be a lot of good things happening down the road here. So cross your fingers this comes back. If it does, we're good to go. If it doesn't, I'm a little nervous. In terms of overall where workers are, manufacturing is never going to be the solution. This is not going to happen. It can help. There are still millions and millions of jobs. 11, that's 12 million jobs. This is not a trivial number, don't get me wrong. But our labor force is 150, 160, 170 million jobs out there too. So 155, I think, before the recession started. So this is not, you can see the recession, we lost almost 2 million jobs. We've gained about 60% back, great. But this is not going to be the end all and the be all. These jobs pay well, they're highly productive and so on. But we're not going back to where we were back here. This is 40 years ago, 45 years ago. Right? We have half the number of jobs in our economy. Job numbers are much, much bigger. Manufacturing is a much smaller percentage of our economy, despite the fact that these workers are much more productive and we make much more stuff than we did 40 years ago with many more workers. Right? These workers are ridiculously productive. Let's talk quickly about inflation, then we'll get on to housing. Inflation matters because the cost of money is involved here, right? Is there inflation or not? Yeah, there's inflation. There's been no inflation until March. No inflation of any noticeable magnitude until March. This March, so just last month, if you compared last month to the month before, you see this big spike. And today, data came out this morning, another measure of inflation, PCE inflation. It went up from 1.4% year over year to 1.8% year over year. This is CPI, somewhat different. And you can see it's at about 2.6. They both jumped up in March. This one by quite a lot, by about 0.8 of a point. The other measure, the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, PCE inflation, up by 0.4. Inflation's going up. Let me explain to you what's going on. The inflation here we're looking at is real. But this so far is meaningless. What we're looking at is inflation now compared to 12 months ago. 12 months ago, the cost of almost everything you bought went down, with the exception of toilet paper, personal products, wipes, naps, sanitary stuff, goo to wash your hands, you know, the wherever it is, you know, you put your hands to wash them and disinfect. Those prices went crazy, but most other things went down in price. So you're comparing prices now that are kind of normal for airlines, gasoline, and so on, to what they were worth 12 months ago when the economy was on its back and virtually dead. Like, the inflation year over year is pretty high because prices then were low. It's not that they're going up so fast now, it's they collapsed a year ago. So I don't care about that inflation. That's meaningless. It's true. The data is telling you a true story, but it doesn't really matter. So we're done with that. Now, going forward, we're going to get another type of inflation. That's going to be bottleneck inflation. This is more serious because it's current. The price of a refrigerator really is more expensive. The price of a car is really more expensive. The price of a used car is really, really more expensive. The index for used car prices put out by Manheim is up, I think, 18% year over year.
They're crazy. There's no, because you can't buy a new car. They're on back order, right? Or all you can choose to buy is like a $400,000 Porsche, or nothing, because they got their chips, because they'll pay more for the semiconductors that are in short supply than will for a Fiat 500, like a beer can on wheels, right? So they're getting their chips. The Rolls-Royce is probably getting their chips too. So the cars that are selling are more expensive because the firms are stopping to make the cheap cars and only making the expensive cars, kind of like home builders, but I digress. But we'll get back there in a few minutes. So the bottlenecks are there. But will the bottlenecks persist? I don't think they will persist, because they go away eventually, right? I mean, things don't stay in a situation of lack of supply forever. Something's going to give. They're going to build more. The chips will get available. There'll be more containers crossing the ocean, or we'll build another plant, and it goes away. So the Fed says, look, the base effect, the comparing to last year's meaningless, will go away in a few months, and the bottlenecks will go away in 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. So what? Who cares? Ignore it. And the Fed's telling this message over and over and over and over again. I think the Fed's absolutely right in this decision, okay? Now, they may be wrong at the end of the day. That remains to be seen. That's why they play the games. But don't go against the Fed. That's my advice. The Fed's not blinking here. Powell's come out time and time again. All the other chairmen of the bank presidents have all said, we're not going to raise rates. We're going to wait until inflation really hits 2% and unemployment really gets down to 3 or 4% or whatever it is before we raise rates. Trust them. Believe them. They may be wrong, but they're not blinking. They're putting all their deck, all their cards in, their whole pot, they're putting in this game. So don't go against them. So what happens to rates? I think absolutely nothing. The Fed's going to look through the inflation. You can see Fed funds does nothing until the end of 22, in my opinion. Don't bet against the Fed here. The Fed may be wrong, but in the short run, they're going to beat you out. In the long run, maybe you're right and they're wrong, and you can win buying a long 10-year treasury or something. But now let's talk about housing. Housing faces so many problems, it's really unbelievable. It's so many issues out there with housing. There's no supply, demand is insatiable, interest rates have been ridiculously low for a ridiculously long time. COVID's had us completely change the view of our house. We used to think a house was a place to sleep and eat, and that's pretty much it. Entertainment, we go out of town, we go out of the house. Baseball game, we'll go watch that. Movie, we'll go to a movie theater. Swimming, we'll go to the Y or wherever, some club or whatever it is. Everything you did was outside the house. Soccer game, we'll go watch the kids, we'll drive them to a soccer game. Suddenly all these things stop. The value of the house is now higher than it's ever been. The services that the house provides are worth more because there's more, it's providing more services. You're now eating in your house and sleeping in your house and entertaining yourself in your house and going to school in your house, working from your house, working out in your house. Everything is going on in your house. So a house that was worth before $300,000 is now worth $350 because I have nowhere else to go to do all this stuff. This is all I got. So suddenly house prices start to go up. There's demand and supply imbalance, but there's also a repricing of the asset. I fundamentally think that this is what's going on. Suddenly what was worth X is now worth X times 1 point, extra 10% or 15%. Because being in an apartment is no longer a substitute for being in a house. In the past, I'll be downtown, it'll be fun. Now I'm on the 14th floor. 13th floor, I come home, I push 13, unlucky 13, and I die because there's COVID on the button. I don't think so. I got to get out of here. So we're desperate to move out of our apartments or condos into single-family detached houses. And Colorado Springs is a particularly nice place because it's a little cheaper than Denver, and the lots are a little bit larger, and the mountains are beautiful, and so on and so forth. You're closer to the mountains here, I think, physically than you are, much closer than you are in Denver, probably 30 or 40 miles closer or something like that. So there's a lot, that's what makes, part of what makes here particularly, Boise's, there's a lot, Coeur d'Alene, there are a lot of cool places, but these are all smaller, not small, but this is a pretty big one actually, 35th ranked in the US, I think, the size of the Springs. So these are, everything is driving this market to insane heights and problems, right? But this is the crux of the problem. In one slide, this is it. Builders didn't build homes. 10 years. They said, oh, I don't want to build a house. I'll just stay home. I'm joking. They opened up businesses. They changed careers. They became crop dusters. They opened up a bakery. They bought a bunch of gas stations. They moved to a foreign country. They just couldn't, you can't make any money building homes in 2010, 11, 12, 13. And then once you're out of it for 4 years, your skills atrophy, your relationships go away. I might as well do something different that's not such a boom and bust business. Right? So you walk out, you leave, and you don't come back. Youngsters going into the industry, they're not going in. Why take a chance on booming and busting? I'll go become a computer software engineer or whatever it is. I'll do something different. So there's no supply of people entering the industry to build the damn homes. So we're 5 million homes short, right? Roughly 5. And that's the problem. And there's no hope of this problem going away, quite frankly. Builders simply cannot build enough homes. If builders could double production for a couple of years, oh, that would solve the problem in 3 or 4 years. We'd be done. And we'd know that as a market, buyers, we'd say, oh, I'll wait a couple of years, this will go down. No, builders don't have any capacity to build any more homes. The bottlenecks in the industry itself are, it cannot be overcome. They're impenetrable. You cannot get through them. There's no workers to work. There aren't even that many builders to build, right? The number of home builders, NHB is, I don't know, fallen by probably 50% from, I don't know, what, 80,000 to 40,000 is my guess, or something like that, right? There aren't that many people doing it because it was such an undesirable industry to be in for so long. And now we're paying the price. This is primarily a demand problem that we face, a supply problem, I'm sorry. There's massive demand. There's just no friggin' supply out there. Try as you will, you can't will supply. You can't make it. And doing anything to increase demand, unless it's met with an increase in supply, is a really bad idea. Because you're just taking gasoline and pouring it on a fire, right? You don't want to do just simply demand side strategies. You want to primarily do supply side strategies because we can't get enough homes. If it were up to me, I'd say, look, subsidize the builders, for God's sake. Get them to build every house that you can build that's like $1 under the median price or the entry-level price or the 80% of AMI price. Every dollar, we'll give you $1 to compensate you for the cost of those inexpensive entry-level homes, because that's the homes that are the worst over. So sales have been sucky for the last 10 years too, for the same reason. You don't build them, you can't sell them. There's no magic going on here. But this is the single biggest problem. This lack of supply is going to continue to bite us for a long time. So here's another way to look at it. This is single-fam starts per 100 households. It completely collapses in the recession, the global financial crisis, or the housing bust, whatever you want to say. And it's been slowly moving back at its leisurely pace. It's still now lower than it was 20 years ago. So this entire time, until now, we've been massively underbuilding. All this whole area here is massive underbuilding. That's the 5 million homes. It's now getting down to about 0. The deficit of homes is no longer growing, but it's not shrinking either. 2 years ago, home builders built 1.3 million. Last year, 1.4. This year, 1.5. Are you kidding me? We're building an extra 100,000 homes, and we're 5 million homes short. That means by the time I'm like 125, this problem will go away. I mean, this is a serious problem. This problem was created over 10 years. I don't know how, quite frankly, how we get out of it that fast. It's the problem that I want you to spend all your time thinking about. How do we get more homes built here? Now, you can, in fact, steal builders from Denver. Oh, build here. We'll give you a $10,000, some signing bonus to build. I'm not suggesting you do this. Don't get me wrong. That solves this problem in the Springs, but it exacerbates the problem in Denver. So, you can maybe solve your problem at the expense of somebody else, but it's very hard for the country to build hundreds of thousands of more homes on an annual basis. This is what really has to be done to begin to attack this problem. Here's another way of looking at this problem. This is per capita housing starts, by persons, not by households. A little different, but you can see this incredible underbuilding here. This is the problem. We've never had, this goes back to 1960. That's 62 years of data. You just don't get problems this bad this often, right? In something that's an absolute necessity for everybody. Everyone's got to live somewhere, right? So this is, you do this for too long. We did this for 10 years, and it's a problem. So you end up with things like this. This is population growth, right, here, and inventory here. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the realtors go, sorry, there's nothing to buy. Inventory is really small. Maybe buy the house sight unseen and waive your inspection and bid $100,000 over ask. Maybe you got a chance. That's the best way to go. I mean, what do you tell them? I don't know. If you want to wait and look at the house, I mean, the house is gone because you got this gaping space. Here's another way of looking at it. Housing units here and household size, number of households there. Any way you look at this, per capita, per thousand, households, people, individuals, there's this yawning gap that's out there. We had a problem already 4, 5, 6 years ago, right? But it's now gotten worse. The problem's now, to some extent, sort of it's on roids, right? I mean, it's Colorado. Drugs are legal here. It's okay, right? Okay, maybe not. Public buildings shouldn't say that. Sorry, I apologize, guys. My mistake. Just pass me a gummy bear and it's all okay. Can the builders solve the problem? I already said no. Let me prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. This is inventory of new homes. Puts out every month by the Census Bureau, puts it out. They ask builders what's going on, and they get it from permitting offices and so on. Green is permitted, not started. So the builder hasn't spent more than a couple $100 getting the permit, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, it depends where, but this is not a big investment, doesn't really matter, doesn't count. Blue is being built like a spec home. It's inventory. A spec home is inventory, right? Because it's not already purchased. It's not a sold home that hasn't been started yet. The ones I want you to focus on are red. These are homes that have been built for sale. So a spec home that's finished, that the builder's paying monthly interest payments on, and is crying every time they have to make the payment because the house hasn't sold. Back in 2004 and 5, builders suddenly found themselves with a lot of these homes available. That's why they had this big blip up. This is the problem. Lots of permits because they were optimistic, starting lots of houses, and this is, you can see a little further time-wise. You keep moving further in time. Earlier, a little later, and then it's too late. You're done. So what have builders done? Builders stopped building spec homes, right? They don't want to hold too many. The banks won't give them the money. And so homes naturally collapse here because you're in a big recession here. Through mid-9, you're in a recession. So that's a recessionary decline. Then the housing market just stinks. There's no demand for housing. We've all been torched. Our credit scores have been wrecked because we foreclosed on our house. For 7 years, we can't get a loan from a conforming loan for Fannie and Freddie conforming loan. So demand for housing goes down. So we hit this natural bottom here. It bottoms out in end of 12, early 13. Then it begins to go up again. Great, we're rebuilding some inventory of new homes for sale. So you could walk to a builder and say, hey, I want to buy your house. Well, I got half a dozen right here. Sure, here are the keys, give me the money. But then what happens now? Last spring, COVID comes, and what do we end up doing? Look at this. That's the lowest number in the history of the series. 70, oops, wrong direction. That's 1973. That's 40 years of data, 50 years of data, 50 years of data. It's the lowest it's been. So builders, they know they could sell everything they make, and they can't make any houses because there's no one to hire. We'll get into all the problems the builders are facing here. But they have a myriad number of problems themselves because like manufacturers know they can sell everything they want, so can home builders. Manufacturers can increase production, but builders essentially can't. This is the best market they've been in their whole lives. And they bump up production by 6%. It's not because they want to produce so little, they just simply can't do more. So now we're not building new homes. Demand is up. Oh, I'll buy an existing home. That will solve my problem, right? No. There are no homes there either. Inventory peaked out literally for 1 month back in 2007 at 4 million units. Okay, 1 month, I get it. I'm not trying to deceive you here and lie to you and give you weird data. But you can look back here and say, hey, it was kind of like 3.5 million for 3 years. We had inventory of existing homes of 3.5 million units. What's the inventory now? 1 million. And worse is you can see in the data inventory seasonal. It goes up the first 6 months of the year and down, up and down, up and down, like a sawtooth, right? Here for several years there was no trend. It was just stable. Then the trend is down. Then the trend collapses. But now the number's not going up. This is the spring season. Everybody puts their house on sale now, and simultaneously everybody buys a house. Because you have school in the fall, you want to sell your house in March, April, May, buy a house in June, July, August, so come September when school starts and vacations are over, you're ready to go in your new location. But there's no homes. Because there's no seasonality anymore. Work from where? You can work home. You don't have to take off time to stay home with the kid or for the movers to come and packing. You do that while you work. Take a phone call, work, you pack, whatever. Kids are in school. There's no school. This is all wrecked. And if you want to buy a home, where do you look? There's no homes to buy. I'd like to sell my house. I'll make a big fat capital gain. The house that I sell, it'd be great. I'll make $100,000, $200,000, but then I'll have to spend $250 more for a house I can't find, and I'll have to offer $300,000 over list, and maybe I'll get a piece of garbage because I can't even inspect the house because I won't have time. I'll go and open house look, and then we'll make a contract. That's crazy. So everything is hyper fearful, hyper desperate, hyper demand, hypo supply. Right? This is nuts. And this problem will slowly go away, inevitably. Coronavirus recedes, people will put their house on the market for sale. They won't be afraid of getting virus from some person who walks through their house and coughs all over their coffee machine. Right? So that'll go up. And higher rates will reduce demand a little bit, and higher prices will reduce demand. And all this stuff will slowly begin to increase inventories. And inventory is the single most important thing to look at. If inventory starts to go up, price appreciation rates start to go down. There's a very detailed, highly correlated relationship between supply and price, right? Because this is an intersection of demand and supply. So this tells us how hot the market is. It's crazy hot. So what happened to home prices? They've gone virtually vertical. You know, you're bouncing along, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then, whoa, starting last March or April or May or whenever the month was, poof, a noticeable kink in the appreciation rate, right? Or the price level in this case, technically. And why? Look at this one. This is home prices in red, and this is wages in blue. And wages went up here not because employers were so nice. It's because employers fired all their low-wage employees. Well, we have a restaurant. We're not going to be around, so I'll fire all my low-quality staff, the low-pay staff, and keep the 3 or 4 really important, critical members of the place. Even though the restaurant's closed, I'll keep you on payroll because when we come back, I'm going to need you guys. But like a waiter or something, forget it. Or a host or a hostess, goodbye. So we got rid of all our low-paid workers, so the average wage skyrockets. So a lot of the wage data is kind of messy because you have to clean out this problem from it. The data I showed you earlier on wages cleaned that problem out. It was the same person 12 months later. So that cleaned the data up. But you have this, so look at this. I mean, look at this gap. Look at this. It was a gap here for years. How's it? Then a little bit better. And then, whoa, this is much worse. So you end up with something like this. So this graph here, take this graph, superimpose it right here. There's the kink. And this is wages, hourly earnings. Wages don't go up. Home prices now are going up faster than ever, but wages aren't going up any faster than they were. The problem, now interest rates are lower, that helps, certainly, don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. It helps, it's creating big demand from people who have money who can afford to buy the house. But if you were just barely able to before, forget about it now, it's all over, game over for you, right? You can't do it. If you don't own a house from before, it's really hard to get in. If you don't own stock you can sell that's appreciated, it's very hard to get in. And if you lost your job for any period of time over the last 12 months, you're not going to get a house. There's no way you're going to get a house. So let's look at it other ways. Maybe I'm giving you some information that's looking particularly bad or good. So here's another measure. This is house price to median income. Okay, things aren't as bad as they were in 2005. That's true. They were more extreme back then because remember what was going on back in 2005, 2006? Anybody could get a loan. You didn't even have to be alive to get a loan. My daughter, she was very much alive, she was 10. She would get like multiple credit card offers every week. She could have gotten like 10 credit cards and got her down payment and bought the house. She didn't have a job. I bet if I had a dog, the dog would have gotten credit card offers. Fido, your free introductory offer, Chewy discount 10%, first order of dog food. I'm making it up, but you get the point. Credit conditions were so easy, it was easy to get a loan. That's what drove this. Now, credit ain't so easy to get right now. Credit's rarely been harder than it is to get now. So we're not creating a bubble in terms of price and unaffordability. This is an organic problem that we have on our hands. Now the price appreciation rates are the same now as they were back in 04, 5, 6, but the driver, the reason we are experiencing this, completely different. Credit then was never easier to get credit than it was in 2004, and it will never get that easy again in history, ever again, because Congress solved that problem through Dodd-Frank. Okay, we can argue they solved it or not, but they had massive implications on it. So here's one way. This is the worst it's been in any other time except the global financial crisis, or the lead up to the housing bust. Here's another way. House prices to national wage index. It's a little different, but the result is the same. It's the highest it's been except for the few years leading up and coming down from the global financial crisis. So we're at a situation where house prices are objectively high. There's no question about it. None compared to incomes. No doubt about it at all. And the problem won't be easily solved. Last time it was easier to solve it. We had overbuilt, and the problem was credit. You could fix the credit problem by denying credit to people who weren't really shouldn't have gotten in the first place. And we had extra homes available. We had overbuilt by 1 million homes or something. So that problem went away. Suddenly demand was lower, prices came down, and there were these ample extra homes floating around. So the problem went away. I mean, it took years to work the problem away, but it was easy to solve it, right? Now it's a very different story. This is a systematic undersupply and prices that are now approaching, but not close to it yet, the prices that they had back here when things were just completely haywire. So look at starter homes. This is where the rubber really hits the road. Not only are we short 5 million homes or 4 million homes or whatever the number ends up being or is, but what type of homes are we short? At the low end. Because the builders can't afford to build a cheap house and make any money at it. Oh, the land, too expensive. The labor, it's gone up. The input cost, the washer used to cost $1,000, now it's $2,000. The windows used to be $10,000, now they're $15,000. Lumber used to be $20,000, now it's $50,000. You can't build an entry-level home. There's no way. Just as the car manufacturers, and I mentioned this in joking earlier, just as the car manufacturers have stopped building the cheap cars and only build the expensive cars, well, builders do the same sort of thing. I have a limited supply of labor. My input costs are high. Where can I make money? So you build high-end homes. That helps. It's better to build high-end homes than no homes at all. That's clearly a good solution. That's clearly better than, and should not be discouraged. Because if you don't build enough high-end homes, rich people bid up the next highest-priced homes. You want more supply. Wherever you're going to get more supply, by all means, take it. But builders are doing the rational thing here too, like everybody else would. So look at income growth. This is a starter home price and income growth and median income. I just insulted this guy too. The mayor's leaving. I'm sorry, Mr. Burgomeister. Thank you. I wouldn't have said that had I known who you were before you left, but sorry. Don't take it out on the builders and the realtors or the apartment owners. So look here. This is inventory of different home sizes. And you can see it's perfectly inverted. The smallest homes, perfectly positively correlated. The lowest priced homes have the lowest inventory. The highest priced homes have the highest inventory. It isn't that they're so high. They're not. But it's much worse at the low end because the builders not only didn't build those 5 million homes, they didn't build a high percentage of the homes that might have been built, might have been low-priced homes, and forget about it. Codes, regulations, land, borrowing money from banks, all the costs keep adding up. 1,000 here, 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is, we're out of luck. So you want entry-level homes or affordable homes? Forget about it. It can't be. So, and what's being bought now? Expensive homes. Because who can move out of their home easily and move somewhere? I live in a condo in downtown Denver on the 16th Street corridor mall. But all the homeless people live there, then they're injecting themselves with heroin. Maybe I'll move to Colorado Springs. if you own the place, you can afford to sell, take a loss, move, right? But if you rent, it's not so easy to rent there and now stop renting and buy a home in the Springs when prices are going up vertical. So this is more a situation of wealthier people are moving. Poor people can't move. Wealthy people moving from, in many cases, so they're moving within Colorado, rich people within Colorado moving from Denver elsewhere. But then they're coming from even wealthier states or higher priced states. They're coming from freaking California. And they come to Colorado and they say, Mr. Commissioner, how much house costs here? And you say $300,000. And they say, is that the down payment? You go, no, that's the home price. And they all take $3. And suddenly your kid can't buy the house because these buffoons from California, from San Francisco, where they sold a condo that was 700 square feet for $14 million, right? I mean, I'm not making this up. Okay, little. So all these expensive homes, $766,625 to $7. The lowest priced homes under $150. No, $150 to $300. Not happening. There aren't the homes to buy, and the people who are moving are rich, and they're coming from out of state, and they're jacking our home prices up. So in a community of this size, if you have 3,000, 4,000 people moving in from California, they're going to wreck your housing market. If you're New York City and you have 1 billion homes, who cares, a few thousand, big deal. You don't have that luxury here. You need to build more homes to accommodate this immigration. Otherwise, you get this crazy outcome, right? And the builders can't build, and the demand is stronger, and they're moving in, and they're rich. Wow. This is a combination of really awful things. I hate just to be such a downer here. I'll tell better jokes to compensate. But it's a real problem. I mean, so this is pending home sales. This is last year. This gray line is last year. So Jan, Feb were on par with the prior years. It collapses in March, and then April, May, it goes crazy. Absolutely crazy. This is when, I gotta get out. I gotta move. I gotta get out. And the rest of the year, it's, I gotta get out. I gotta get out. Now it's seasonal. This is the spring selling season, peak of the market. It declines. The key thing to look at here is the gap. The gap between 2020 and all the prior years. This distance is what matters. So in May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, there was this huge vertical gap. The vertical gap is how much pending sales were higher than the preceding year, or in this case, like 10 years of data, 7 years of data. There was a palpable increase in pending sales because we were all racing out from where we were to go where we're going to be or where we are now. But then prices keep going up. Inventory keeps shrinking, rates go up a little, and look, this year, we're back to normal again. Because even with money, there's nothing to buy anymore. The inventory is what's remarkable, literally about the data for Denver and here in the Springs and across the country, is that sales have done as well as they have, despite the fact that inventory has utterly collapsed. Across the entire Front Range, the inventory of homes is 0.6 of a month. The normal's 2. You're at 1/3. You're like at 3 weeks, essentially. And sales really aren't down very much. They're down by 3%, up by 4%. They're not doing as well as they are in the country as a whole. The country as a whole is doing better because you need a freaking electron microscope to find a house for sale around here. And the buyers are just desperate, and they don't care. The house there's not even a photo. Doesn't matter. I'll buy it anyways. Nothing matters. Look at home vacancy rates. They're the lowest they've been since 1977, 78, 72, 71, 72. This is the OPEC oil shock of 73, 74, the Yom Kippur War. Price of oil quadrupled from roughly to $12 a barrel. We had a big recession there. This is 50 years ago. People are staying in the house. No one's giving up a house. Houses aren't vacant because a vacant house is worth a lot of money. This is a second home or something that you own, whatever, How about kids? Well, they can't afford to buy a house. It's getting worse. This is trend through like 2018 or 19 already, right? Home prices were getting expensive. Jobs were getting hard to get. Wages weren't going up all that much. And these lazy, good-for-nothing millennials were just staying at home. I mean, I love my daughter like the world, and I'd walk through a minefield for her, but as long as she lives 500 miles away or more. What did George Burns say? There's nothing like warm, loving, happy, kind, generous family that lives 1,000 miles away, you know? There's something to it. I'm joking, but you get my point. But this is a real problem. At least the women aren't nearly the losers that men are. Women seem to get out of the house with more speed and alacrity than men. Men are staying home playing Grand Theft Auto 64 or something. I don't know what, on sofa surfing with their friends. But this is a problem, right? And it's not the builder's fault. This is another message that's important. Builders don't build expensive homes because they want to. Some builders build expensive homes because they want to, because that's their niche. There are restaurants that sell burgers for $10 and burgers for $50, and your place that sells Chateaubriand for $500. They all find a little niche and make their money and try and get away from competition as best they can. This is a price pyramid put up by the builders, and this is how many can afford at that level, but not the next level. So the cheaper the home price is, these are the people, there's a lot of people here. You have 100 million households here that can afford to buy a home. But the builders can't build. They're building here. There's so few households. All these households combined are like 30 million or something. There are very few households that can afford to buy the homes the builders are building. They'd love to build a cheaper house, but they just can't do it because of the rules and regulations that are out there that make it more complicated, and the increasing costs and all those other things. Now, many of these things you cannot fix. I understand you cannot fix the price of a refrigerator. There's nothing you can do to do that one. So don't even waste your time and think about it. Just done, goodbye. You can ask Maytag, yeah, they'll say thanks very much, you know. And here's an example of what happens when you raise the price of a house by $1,000, the median home price. You know, for 2021, it went from $346. It is $346. Let's say we bump it up by $1,000. You knock out 154,000 people who could have afforded to buy that house, who aren't buying that house. Now, many of these people already own a house, but it gets hard for them to buy a new house, and it's get hard to enter us. So every little thing you do makes a big difference here. 1,000 here, 1,000 there, 5,000 here, 5,000 there. The lumber package goes up. It really matters. Now, I've talked about home ownership here and buying a house. Let's talk about rents for a few minutes and what's going on in the rental world. This graph looks pretty good. Home prices here in blue, rent increases in red. They go up, they're peaking, and they come down. Well, it's kind of good. No one wants to rent a home right now because it's multifamily. You push the button, you die. This is going to end. This is going to stop. Prices are so expensive, you're going to have to live in a rental home whether you want to or not. Right? You got no choice. And COVID will go away. But this isn't as good as you think. There's some subtle problems here exacerbating this problem too. First, rental prices now are starting to rise again. Next month, we're going to start to see increases in the rental prices. And you got this. Single-fam rentals. Builders now are building entire subdivisions for Wall Street firms, like Tricon Residential, Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent. This is an entire asset class that didn't exist 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And in the depths of the recession, Wall Street said, homes are cheap. Let's buy homes. Let's go long homes, and we'll bring professional management to this, and we're going to make money owning single-family detached homes. Heretofore, this was a small industry owned by people like you and me. I bought a second rental home, or you bought 2 rental homes. And that was the vast majority of homes for rent, single-family. But now it's being increasingly owned by Wall Street. And they realize that the closer the homes are together, the easier it is to clean them and paint them and wash them and all that kind of stuff. So now they're buying entire subdivisions from builders. These homes would have been for sale houses that are now for rent. And the houses that these places bought 12, 13 years ago that we all thought they would sell when the market turned up and they could make a capital gain, no, they're holding on to it because the returns are good and they've driven the cost down as hard and fast as they could by bringing professional management and economies of scale to the process. So there's millions of homes that would have been for sale that are now for rent, making the problem worse. And these homes that they're buying and building are at the lower end. They're not building a castle for $2 million. That doesn't make a lot. But they want to buy entry-level homes in Phoenix, in Atlanta, in Charlotte, homes in cities where they're cheap. And unfortunately, in the West, there are no cheap homes. Because there aren't, I'm not joking here, you know this, there aren't a lot of cities in the West. In the East, there's tons of cities. You want a town of 100,000, 200,000 people, they're all over the place. I mean, New York State's probably got 10 of them all by themselves. But the whole Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, the four corners states, there probably aren't 10 cities that big in the whole four states. I mean, what, Arizona has what, 2? Maybe flag 3? There are almost no cities out west. So the problem is, and you have California, and they're moving east, making it even worse, right? The New Yorkers at least think, well, we're better than you, so there's nowhere for us to move because we're moving down. But the Californians realize where they live sucks, and they're happy to leave. So you have no place for them to move to, no towns, and they're really rich. That's a uniquely Western problem. East, it's easier. There are more affordable cities. Now, they'll keep moving east eventually and make Charlotte and Atlanta more expensive. But these rental places, owner rental places, they're buying places where it's actually cheap. And they're buying in Phoenix, which is a Western city where it's cheap. But they're going to drive the price up because of this new dynamic that's going on. It's sad, I know. So here you see it. This is single-fam rentals. 2006, it was 12 million. Now it's more like 17. That's friggin' 5 million homes. So we're underbuilt by 5 million, and now we've taken 5 million off the market for rental purposes. That's 10 million houses. And multifam starts have stayed solid. Single-fam homes price starts collapsed for a few months in the recession, right? Because in March, the builders realized they weren't going to sell homes. They stopped building. But multifam, you can't do that because once you start building a multifam structure, you got to keep going. You can't stop because then you have zero value out of it, right? So, and the recession ended so fast in 3 months, then they started building again. So multifam hasn't, I'd like to see multifam go up. But multifam really won't go up much until the coronavirus kind of goes away and people are confident and comfortable enough buying a rental apartment. Condos too, I guess, but there's not that many of those, relatively speaking. But that was just before the recession. There was this huge boom, and then it collapsed, but then very quickly came back. No noticeable change. And the number of multifam under construction is even higher, because once you start these things, you can't stop them. So multifam can help you to some extent. There's no question. People don't want multifam. You ask someone, what do you want when you're 30 years old? You're 30, 35, what do you want? No, almost no one says, I want to live in a condo. They want a single-family detached house. That's what Americans want. They think this is success. In their minds, this is the best thing, right? We've conditioned ourselves to think this way. We haven't done ourselves any favors, but that's a whole separate conversation. Even though multifam has not collapsed and not gotten worse, this is a very sad slide. It's from Brookings. This shows burden of owners owning homes and burden for renters renting homes. So think of 2 different categories of people. Owners in homes that are paying a mortgage on, renters living in an apartment that they're paying rent on. Now, who's bearing more burden? On which group is it harder to live? Below 1 here, the owners are having a more difficult time than the renters. They're more burdened than the renters. So the ratio of the burden is higher for the owners, the renters. But over the last bunch of years, what's happened? It's completely flipped. Now it's harder almost everywhere for renters than owners because rents keep going up, right? And wages don't go up so much. So the problem's even worse for renters. And you can see it here. Rent increases, income. So now we're talking these poor people who've maybe lost their jobs, who don't own a house, who don't own stock, haven't gotten a pay raise, and their rent's gone up. And they go, WTF. I mean, this is, so even where the construction didn't stop, okay, it's better that it didn't stop than it did, but there's no relief going on here either. Here's another way of looking at the same thing about the income, not the rent prices. This is the 99.99th percentile, so 0.001. They're living large, 99.9 to 99.99, so the upper 1/10 of 1%. This is 99.5, the upper 0.5%, the upper 1%, the upper 5%, the upper 10%, 90th percentile and down. All income growth has gone up. If you're in the top 10% of the population, it's really good to be you. And if you aren't, it sucks. Now, this is extreme, right? I can show you other graphs where it's not quite as extreme, right? You can look at the bottom quartile and it's horrible, and the middle is just bad, right? But the point here is the really rich got really richer. So even if average goes up, it doesn't help you a hell of a lot because it's going upstream primarily. So the incomes are going up, but not for the people who rent. Rent's going up. And then there's education. And a lot of this is being driven by education. This is unemployment currently by education. If you have a college degree, you're here in yellow. If you have some college, you're in green. If you have a high school diploma, you're in red. And if you have less than a high school diploma, you're in blue. Unemployment among people without high school degrees or with a high school degree is pretty high. You know, at 7% unemployment or at 8 or 9% unemployment, you're not getting a pay raise because there's tons of people out there. At those levels, you're not going to see a pay raise. Oh, but down here at 3 or 3.5, yeah, 4, yeah, you get a pay raise. And it'll keep falling. Our economy has become increasingly wonderful if you have education, because you can work from home, you deal with ideas, you're not making banging metal, right? Even though those guys are actually paid pretty well. The new jobs for low-income people, they're working at Amazon. They're delivering your pizza. They're at Grubhub, Instacart. These are the jobs that would have gone to people without education 20 years ago. This is where they are employed, right? That's them and them. So look at the outcomes here. Bachelor's degree, labor market, this is recent data, it's a couple days old. You're down by 1%. Some college, you're down by 1.5. High school or less, you're down by 3.5. That's a problem. They're the folks who need the affordable housing. They don't have a job. Their wages haven't gone up. And then these rent-burdened households, they're just one accident away from them being a mess, a hot mess. And then the costs to city and county go way up, right? They've saved, this is a 15-year period, from 2001 through 2015, average wealth of a homeowner's picked up $6,000, $7,000. This is savings. This is cash savings, not wealth, savings in your checking account, right? Non-burdened houses, burdened households, there's nothing there. I mean, they get a flat tire, these guys are out of luck. They're not paying their rent, or something bad's happened. They're borrowing money from friends, they're hawking some jewelry, you know. They're one accident, one calamity away from having a hard time. And then they end up on the county doorstep, and congratulations, you're taking care of them. And that's very expensive, right? So why don't the builders build more homes? Why? This is from NAHB, it's a couple years ago. This is from 2016, it's probably gotten worse. This is land use, essentially. Land use regulations have raised the price of land above what it should be. $85,000 is the cost of land, because of added cost because of regulations. You have to have large lots, big setbacks, you know, you can make up whatever it is. You know, if you have a septic system, it has to have 47 acres because it won't perk otherwise, or whatever, right? I'm making this up, but you get the point. Land use regulations are critical, right? And you can see it in examples. For example, if you want to buy a buildable lot, it might cost $200,000. I'm making it up. If you want to buy a lot that's not buildable, it might cost $20,000 because it's not permitted. You'll never get it. That discrepancy suggests some real problem in land use, right? They shouldn't be that far apart. This is for single fam. This is for multifam. 32% of the price of the development is regulatory costs. What can you do on the regulation side? I don't know. Think of something. I don't make codes. It's easy for me to poo-poo them. I mean, if they're life and safety, you have to have them, right? Egress and all that kind of stuff, and fans and whatever, and smoke detectors and carbon monoxide check. And, yeah, I got it, you know. But how much do you need? I don't know. Now, workers, there were none of those either. This is residential construction here. The number's now higher than it was before the recession began. This is specialty trade contractors in red. It's higher today than it was before the recession began. The workers who could work and build homes are in green. That's overall construction. It was there, it's now there. It's fallen by a couple 100,000. They don't want to build homes. They make more money building skyscrapers. That's a different type of business. A lot of workers building homes want to get into that eventually down the road. There's a step process here. Some don't, but some do. They're not going to go backwards. So you can't get workers. Oh, and how about lumber prices? Are you friggin' kidding me? I don't know why. I see a tree here. Mr. Commissioner, why you should chop it down. You could probably pay your salary for a year or two on that one tree. I'm thinking of chopping the trees in my backyard, for God's sake. $1,400 for 1,000 board feet? Yeah. Where's Paul Bunyan or something, right? I mean, this is crazy. But a builder the builder package costs have skyrocketed. It's added $25,000, $30,000 to the cost of a house. So affordability, completely gone. New home prices, they're ridiculously high. because you're building for richer people, because you can't afford to build down there, because you can't make any money down there. And this problem's not going to go away. Look at this. This is a graph of population. So peak people is here. This is the single largest cohort alive in the US, between 25 and 30 years old. And what happens in 5 years? Shockingly, they'll be between 30 and 35. And what do people do at that age? They get married, they have kids, they buy a house. Although now the order's random. They buy a house, they get a tattoo, they get married, they buy a house, they have kids, then they get married, they don't buy a house, they buy a house, then they get married, whatever. But usually you have kids, you want a house. That drives you to the house because you need space away from your friggin' children. So demographically, this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. This here, back here, when they were here, that was great. They were renting apartments. It was great to be a multifammer. Now they want to own homes. So this demand for homes isn't going to go away. I mean, it goes away here eventually, right? And it will get this problem will go away late as we go further on, because the number of children being born in this country is dropping. We don't have enough sex. I want you to go home, talk to your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, and say, Dr. Eisenberg told us we have to have sex tonight for the good of the country. And I'm serious. If you get resistance, you can say, that's okay, honey. Do you mind if I come to game shows? Call a friend. We need children. So if you wait long enough, this problem goes away, because births peaked out here. They were just as high as they were actually 1960 or so, with back in the baby boom, the peak of the baby boom, right? It was that high, but our country's much bigger, so percentage-wise, much less. But then it's gone straight down since, straight down. We're watching football on Sunday. We're not having children. You can blame the NFL. That's why, conveniently. But housing prices are too expensive. If you go to San Francisco, you don't see any children, because people say, oh, well, let's see, honey, we can have a choice. We can either move to San Francisco and have no children, or Sacramento and a child. I mean, that's the choice. It's crazy, right? You can't afford to do it. The Chinese have this countrywide. Their population shrinking already, because housing prices there are much higher than here. 20 times income, 30 times income. So the extra bedroom is astoundingly expensive, and no one has any children. They've had one child for 40 years, and now they're going to go to 0 children. It's the new approach. I'm not joking. Their fertility rates are plummeting. They're very, very low. So population growth, this is back to 1800. This is the entire history of the U.S. It's never been friggin' lower than it is now. Okay, there, 1 year, a little bit. Soldiers were getting killed then. Even back in the Spanish influenza, it was much higher. 1 year wasn't, right? But this is a crazy low number. So we wait 20, 30 years, there won't be any buyers. We'll be all dead. It doesn't really matter. But we don't have that time to wait. This is a problem that can't be solved by just time, right? This is looking at it over just a 100-year period, not a 250-year period, right? And credit's hard to get too. Wait till credit gets easier. Unemployment goes down, jobs are more plentiful, people have jobs, and suddenly credit gets easier. So population's going to push us for more homes over the next 10 years. Credit's going to get easier. This problem's not going to go away anytime soon. The demand for housing, rental or owners going to continue to rise. And if you think this higher is better, so that's the best, 185. Compare this to what it was 12 or 13 years ago. That's why there was a housing boom back in 2005. Credit was like, it wasn't easy. It was amazingly easy to get. It was effortless to get it. And foreclosure and forbearance, don't worry about it at all. No problem there at all. None, zero. No problem. It's not going to happen. Biden will keep pushing out, force the FHFA to keep pushing out when it times out, so that won't be an issue. Now, quickly, what's going on around here? Colorado, you're growing, it's nice, it's good, no problems there. How about houses that sold above list price in March? 60%. You're one of the worst, best, depends on your perspective. If you're a seller, it's the best. If you're a buyer, it's the worst. There aren't many places worse. There's a couple states there, one there, and half a dozen here. But these people here in these even more expensive places are moving where you are, unfortunately, right? That's the problem you face, right? Wow, it's tough. And you get prices here in the cheaper parts of town are going absolutely bonkers. So the parts of town where the houses, you need them the most, and the people who are most desperate to get in them can't go there because they can't afford them anymore, because they're not building enough of those houses to begin with. Starts are pretty good here. Single fam in red, multifam is the gap between red and blue. So total starts are in blue. So single, from here to red, the gap between red and blue is multi, and the total is single and multi. It's been going up. That's not bad. But it's no better than it was 12, 13, 14, 15. And you have this gap right here when you were massively underbuilding. Immigration of rich people, not enough homes, chronic under construction. Home prices, wow, they're going up. Denver in blue, the Springs here, Pueblo there. They were doing the same for a long time, and then around 2000, Denver kind of decoupled a little bit, right? Right now, however, as someone mentioned earlier, if you look at the slope, here it's steeper than that slope. So right now, the Springs is going up at a faster rate than Denver is, because Denver's unaffordable. So you drive down an hour, you get a cheaper house. Housing prices, whoa, 9, 10% in the Springs in red. Look at that. That's Denver's in blue. The Springs has now been going up faster for several years in a row. There's been increase in Pueblo for that matter too. Drive to qualify or something, right? I mean, you're looking at 10% chronic, 9, 10% for 7 or 8 years in a row. I mean, this is not normal. This is a very high price. Now, let's look at population growth. This is an interesting slide. Overall population, I look at both El Paso and Teller. Okay, Teller's a much smaller county, right? It's like 25,000 people. El Paso's, I don't know, what, 700,000 or something? So you got to keep in mind that one's 25, 30 times bigger than the other, right? But you can see Teller was growing much faster back then when it was really tiny. Like there were 9 people there. One person moves in, it's a 10% increase in the population, right? So you get weird things, funny. But you can see lately, Teller hasn't done so well, small. But by contrast, El Paso's done really quite well, growing at roughly 1.5% a year. Steady population growth. Steady population growth. Now, let's take it next slide. Where are they coming from? They're not coming from El Paso County. I don't know where they're coming from, but they're not from El Paso, because you're getting an average of 10,000 people a year. It was more there, a little bit less. Now you're back at 10,000. Most of your increase in populations, if your population's 700,000, do the math with me, and you're growing at 1.5%, say even call it 2% a year. Let's be generous, it's easy math. That's 14,000 people, right? 700,000 times 2%, 14,000. But of those 14,000, 10,000 are coming from out of state, out of county. That's all I can tell you, out of county. And the data's old, this is 2018. You just can't get good data new. This comes from IRS, it takes some friggin' years to deal with it. But that's the gold standard in data. So most of your population growth is coming from people coming out of county. Now we know recently from people where they move nearby. People leave New York, they're going to other counties in nearby areas, right? Colorado, in 2017, you were number 9 in migration, according to United Van Lines, number 9. In 2018, you were number 16. In 2019, you were number 17. And in 2020, you're number 27. Because you're expensive. People are moving here less than before. In 2000, you were the 3rd fastest growing state. Now you're about the 10th or 11th or 12th. You're off the list. You're still growing pretty fast, don't get me wrong, but not super fast because you've become an expensive place to live. Okay, there are a lot of affordable housing solutions. There are no silver bullets, none. If it was easy, you'd have already done it. Nothing is easy here, but I'd like you to think about taking a shotgun and trying everything. Don't say we're going to do this or that or that. We're going to do this and this and this and this and this and this. The small houses, the this, the that. The list is yours. You can have the list. There's thousands of ideas here. Micro housing, which you talked about, if I'm not mistaken. Accessory dwelling units, have density, overlay districts, taxing land at its highest and best use. If you have vacant land, you should tax the crap out of it, because they'll do something with it. They'll create jobs, they'll build apartments, but you gotta get land into use. Vacant land, when you have an affordability crisis, is a friggin' tragedy, right? My favorite is dynamic zoning, where you continually upzone. Every 5, 10 years, you just upzone. Whether they like it or not, you upzone the property. It's single fam, zoned 1 unit, make it 2 every 10 years. 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Someone's going to tear the house down and put up more units. Don't let the people determine the zoning. Let the home prices determine the zoning. Say, if home prices go up by more than 10%, we're going to double the zoning. They go up by 20%, we're going to triple the zoning. Goes up by nothing at all, we won't increase the zoning. We are all in this together, boys and girls. Make sure we build more homes. That way we won't force a zoning upgrade on you and your house. Put the toes of the homeowners under fire, and they'll suddenly change their. Now it's hard for this to happen. I mean, this is a sea change in thinking about things. There are more social investing, land banks, and exclusionary zoning, and inclusionary zoning. Biden's concerned about this. So what's his solution? He's going to offer $2.5 billion collectively to politicians, essentially, in cities and counties, to bribe you to change your land use policies. I don't think $2.5 billion is enough, because the blowback from homeowners and voters is going to be pretty strong. I don't want these crappy homes or rental apartments near my house. No, I'm going to vote you out of office. So maybe he offered $10 billion. I think 5 to 10 might be enough to get some traction here. But, I mean, when the federal government is essentially bribing cities and counties to change zoning laws, you know you've got a problem on your hands, right? Okay, so there's a few more. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Don't discourage building, legalize pot. Make sure housing goals, right, tell us what they are. You know, make sure your growth and development patterns, Dirk, are correlated with your housing patterns. Don't just attract jobs, because there's no houses. You're not doing anybody any favors in the long run here, right? All right, solutions that require more money. Build a whole new city. Just make a new city. That's expensive here? Well, build there where it's cheaper. If there's no one living there, it's got to be cheaper, right? Reduce transfer taxes on land, on homes. I know governments have to make money. I got that. I'm with you here. But it discourages home sales, period, because I know I sold my home in Maryland. Okay, Maryland's an incredibly expensive state. I paid 1.5% transfer tax, and then the buyer paid 1.5% transfer tax. You're probably drooling at the prospect, I know. But I wasn't drooling so much. I was drooling out of pain. But this discourages everybody from moving and buying, and you gum up the works even more and jack up prices. Maybe there are better solutions to get the money. You still need the money, I get it. Now, I'm a big fan of the EITC, have a state EITC, push the feds to have EITC that gives low-income people more money without raising the price of housing. By giving them a home buyer tax credit, that will jack the price of homes up. Earning a higher EITC won't, right? And the most important thing here, right, is you have to have a balanced solution. Ideally, you want to have land use regulation reform so you can get smaller and more dense homes. That gets you more supply. This gets you more supply if you tax vacant land. And then you can get more demand by having vouchers, right? You have to at least have it in combo. Simply demand is not going to solve your problem. It's going to make it worse. You need supply, 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 supply. And if you want to do a little bit of demand side push, okay, that may make some sense, right? There are reasons to do it, right? Holy cow, I've spoken like way too long. I am very passionate about this topic. I want you to understand exactly what I think and why this problem is, okay, I wouldn't say it's intractable. That's a depressing thought, but it's hard. And we all have to work hard at this together to try and think up 4, 5, 6, 7 doable things that are possible. The impossible, forget. The silver bullet doesn't exist. One solution is not going to solve our problems. But if we try half a dozen or a dozen of these things, we may get some traction. And we have to somehow get the existing homeowner population on the side of building more homes. That's why I like tying things to the price of new homes. Well, you're making money on your home. It's going up in value. Well, you're going to have to share some of that benefit with the future buyers by having higher density. What do you want? I don't know if you can physically do this. I mean, whether you can pass it and whether the next legislature will reverse it, right? I mean, nothing in politics is permanent. I get that too. But how do we change the deck chairs here to get everybody rowing in at least the same direction and not in opposite directions? That's really a problem. My name, cell number, phone number, Twitter handle, email address. I put out a blog on the economy 5 days a week, 70 words, no graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you want to get it, give me your business card, email me, or text the word bow tie, one word, no hyphen, no space, to the 5-digit number 22828. You'll be prompted for an email address. You'll hear from me every day till you die. You may not want to do this. You may regret this as one of the worst decisions of your life. Okay, I have spoken for so long. This poor man, probably his knees have buckled under him. He's been encouraging me to leave already for a long time. But thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions as long as we have. Last question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eisenberger. We have about 30 seconds for questions. No.
Perfect.
Does anybody have a question? We've got folks that can walk around and get you that. We did have some questions on Facebook.
Online?
But if they just stuck around long enough, they got them answered. So I think
Oh.
we've answered all of those.
Wow.
So
I'm long,
Any
but I'm
questions here?
comprehensive.
I think I can follow. Can you hear me from here?
You're the apartment lady.
Yeah. One of my many names, I suppose. So, what would you suggest our state legislature is looking at inclusionary zoning? Can you hear me? Okay. So, what would you suggest to our state legislature that's looking at inclusionary zoning as one of many answers?
I'm not a big fan here of inclusionary zoning. You know, someone's got to pay the freight. You can't get a subsidized unit for nothing. So they're going to raise the price on other units. The developer will say, well, I was going to build 100 and sell them at this price, or whatever, rent them at that price, but now I'm going to I'll get 10 more, but those have got to be under market price. So I got to charge more somewhere else. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, okay, if you want to do that, fine, do it, but make sure there's other programs out there as well. That will clearly not solve your problem. There's no question about that. It'll get very few units, right? I mean, at a time like this, you can get more because demand is insatiable, right? But in the normal conditions, I'm not much of a fan. Uh-oh, this is going to be bad. He's been waiting an hour and a half to skewer me now.
No,
already.
it's actually, I don't know if you can hear this or not. Okay. So multi-zoning. Okay?
Pardon me?
Multiple zoning. Right?
Yeah.
So like when I was stationed in Europe, when I was in the military, you saw lots and lots of structures where the first floor was retail, second and third floor was manufacturing, and then, fourth to seventh floor was apartments and stuff.
Dynamite.
Say that again?
Dynamite.
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 Thank
Do
you.
it. It's fabulous.
I've always thought that would be good.
Yes.
Yeah, so, all right.
And that way, you also have lower infrastructure costs because people aren't driving. You can conceivably have less
'cause
driving going on.
You're mixing access to goods and employment
yeah.
and apartments in a single place
Right.
or in a very concentrated place.
Right. No, it's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so
You'll give me the $10 now afterwards, right?
you talked about the importance of changing land use to increase housing supply. Right now in Colorado Springs, about 83% of our residential land is zoned for single-family use, and that carries with it, obviously, large minimum lot sizes, large setbacks, all those sorts of things. So I was curious if you have any insight into, right now we're going through a citywide review of the zoning code. There's a lot of pushback about trying to change single-family zoning. Do you have any insight into, how to get policymakers and residents to understand the importance of doing this to solve our affordable housing crisis?
I'm a friggin' economist. I mean, I don't want to skirt the issue. I mean, this is one of the most difficult things. People buy a house in that neighborhood precisely because it has those amenities, right? It's got large lots and trees and, no one parks on the street or, whatever attracts you to that area. And now by densifying that neighborhood, whoa, the pushback can be remarkably intense. And especially as home prices go up. As home prices go up, the biggest single asset most people, homeowners have is their house. The last thing they want to do is see its value put in jeopardy. So they fight like crazy against anything that might reduce their value. We don't want a school next door. I wouldn't mind it half a mile or a quarter mile away, but not right next door because it's noise and kids and the parents picking the kids up in the car lines and all this horrible stuff. It's exceptionally hard to change these rules. The voters are just painfully resistant to this. And the higher the price, the worse it gets. So you talk to the county commissioners who are here and the city councilors and, I'll tell you a story. It's an FDR story. And FDR met with a bunch of people, meeting the White House. Meeting ends. And he says, that's a great idea, guys, to whoever it was. Now, go out and make me do it. I don't mean to be acerbic here, but politicians, they'll help you, but you got to help them. You got to help them too. You can't expect them to do all the heavy lifting. They're not super people either. You got to get community involvement and community activists and get people behind them. And so they figure, I got friends here. I can take a foot and step a foot in that water and see what it feels like. And maybe I can get some movement here. But you can't just, they're politicians. They got to do it all. That's not going to happen. The political costs here are just exorbitantly high. But yeah, that's the holy grail. If you can densify existing suburban neighborhoods, wow, then you can get lots of homes built. You know, if you densify enough, developers will come and buy half a dozen houses and build a tower. It'll change the neighborhood. I don't know if you can do it. I've never seen it done. So that's not a really positive endorsement, right? But be the first. You'll be famous.
So put the two together. What are the risks of a housing crisis to a region's economy in a small metro area?
You've touched on that earlier, and I apologize for not bringing it up. This is an amazingly big problem that we face, and our GDP as a nation is really being hurt by this housing problem. In the past, people were able to easily move from low-income states to high-income states, and there was steady migration. And the gap in incomes between low-income states and high-income states systematically narrowed in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And then it stopped. And then it goes up. Because, yeah, there may be lots of jobs in San Francisco, but I can't afford to move there. I'll go there and make $100,000 and the rent's $3,000 a month, right? That's not doable, right? After tax, forget it. So there's jobs in these very high-cost areas. There's lots of good jobs and no people. And then in Dayton, Ohio, there's tons of people and no jobs. We need movement. You want people to move. This is the single best solution to income problems. Move and find a job. But the fact that the houses are so expensive precludes the movement. People stay where there are no jobs because they can't afford to move where the jobs are. GDP would literally be half a point higher a year if we could snap our fingers and solve this problem. But the problem is it's everywhere, right? It's not just here. It's everywhere. So this is a nationwide problem. It radiated out originally from some places and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and worse and more. But this is wildly detrimental to economic growth over time and living standards, because you can't avail yourself of that great job. And now with Zoom, maybe it gets easier. You can live somewhere else. It'll dampen this effect a little bit. But this problem is going to persist. It's a very, very serious problem. I mean, you talk about raising GDP by 1/10 of a point being a terrific thing through taxes or through investment tax credits or, you know, whatever it is. That's great. But if we could solve this housing problem, it would be bigger than all those other things. And this is not high tech, right? But it's incredibly hard, and it's crept up on us slowly over time, right? We've sometimes made very self-destructive policies, like California with Prop 13 and Massachusetts with Prop 2.5 and so on, which precluded all kinds of things from happening. Some states, I think as Mass, has something called Proposition 40, and it gives the builders, I think, a 2x4 essentially to beat the communities. You aren't building enough affordable housing, so we'll take you to court. That's a potential solution, but again, you need political action, political will at the state level. Not so easy, blah, blah, blah. But this is a huge, huge, huge problem, not having affordable homes where there are jobs. It's a waste of resources, it slows the economic growth, it reduces living standards, it sucks.
We had a question on Facebook having to do with how do we close the gap between what is paid for rent on vouchers, Section 8, those kinds of things, when we have a national market or a national setting of those prices and a local market that's increasing substantially higher or faster, and the difference between those two.
Gets really wide. Well, you got an extra congressional seat.
Yeah.
You got 7 now instead of 6, or 8 instead of 7.
That's one more employed politician.
Moving to 8 from 7, yeah. So hey, you got now 435th more power in the House of Representatives. That'll clearly solve your problem, right? Kidding aside, yeah, I'm not an expert in the area. I don't know what machinations or what bureaucracies, I don't know. But the problem is real. That's a bad answer.
You see with the decrease in...
Can you use the microphone, because it's on Facebook?
Do you see an opportunity with the decrease in use of office buildings and commercial spaces being transitioned over to affordable and attainable housing?
Yeah, you aren't the first person I've heard suggest that. I'm not a builder, a renovator, retrofitter, architect, engineer, interior designer to know what the costs are. And I'm sure in some buildings it's more economically viable. Now, maybe a strip mall is better to do than a tower. Maybe if a tower is better than a strip mall. I don't really know. But that's certainly something that we should explore. Yeah, absolutely. Because now those buildings are going to be cheaper than they're ever going to be again, right? You know, if someone's going to sell now, they need to sell. Take advantage of it and turn it into something that the community will value more than an empty mall or something, right? And there's good parking and traffic and roads are good near malls, generally speaking. There's something here. I don't know how feasible it is, but I would definitely try and explore and put something together and see if there's, and is there what to buy, right? And will they sell? All right, now we'll look into it and see if we can do something. Give us 3 months or something, you know? You have to have a plan once you buy it to do it. Buying it without, that would be really, really bad.
Just to provide you a little bit of context on that, a new build right now for a multifamily tax credit project, $250,000, $260,000 a door. A recently completed project such as Mr. Lord's describing, $135,000 a door.
Wow, really
So
cheap.
that was a significant difference.
That's a real win, yeah, wow.
And I mean, office vacancy rates were already high
Right.
in this community prior to the pandemic.
They were already rising nationally prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, and not only that, but you know, some of these are older buildings that may not be quite as desirable anymore than the ones that you know, new office space that might be getting built. And it does seem to me, I would agree with that. I think that's absolutely worth exploring.
Can you get me? Can you? I don't know. Either of you, right? So maybe you can call up some REIT in New York City and say, hey, we'll give you the building, do it. Or some, I'm making it up, you know. But, you know, encourage someone to do something quickly and useful in that area. And that's maybe too much of a sweet deal, you know.
It really points out the all of the above approach to this problem, right?
But this certainly seems like a
It
viable.
that isn't going to solve the problem, but if it adds to the number of units, you know, it's just that much more. So.
Right.
Any other questions?
If you're shy to ask your question in public, come see me, and I'll be happy to answer it one-on-one.
Great. Well, we very much appreciate everybody's attendance. All of you on Facebook also. Please continue your questions, and we will continue to work on this. We are going to have another couple of these forums, but let's thank Dr. Eisenberg for his information. Certainly helpful. This will be on the HBA website as a recording, so you can access it there. If anybody needs parking, the lady down here in the green dress, Marla, will be willing to do that for $1. So, so it won't be quite free. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Eisenberg. Thank you all.